All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible stories of risk and reward ever told. We're heading back to the ancient Persian Empire for a tale of high-stakes palace intrigue. It's got a villain who's just dripping with pride and a queen who has to risk literally everything to stop a genocide. So, the whole story really gets kicked off by this one question. You see, it doesn't even start with our hero, Esther. Nope. It starts with another powerful queen whose one single act of defiance created a massive power vacuum. One queen's fall from grace is what sets the stage for another's impossible rise. And to understand just how high the stakes were, you have to get the scale of this place. We're talking about King Xerxes, who ruled 127 provinces. This guy threw a party that lasted for 187 days. I mean, that's not a banquet, that's an endurance event. This was all about showing off his absolute power and unbelievable wealth, and it created a setting where one wrong move could be your last. Okay, so at the very end of this massive, months-long party, King Xerxes, feeling pretty good after a lot of wine, makes a demand. He summons his wife, Queen Vashti, and orders her to come out and show off her beauty for his guests. And what does she do? In a move that shocks everyone, she says no. She refuses to come. Well, as you can imagine, the king is absolutely furious. His advisors panic, thinking if the queen gets away with this, then every wife in the kingdom will start disrespecting her husband. So they convince him to make a public example of her. A royal decree goes out, and under Persian law, this is the kicker, it can never be taken back. Vashti is out, banished from the king's presence forever. And just like that, the throne is empty. So what's the solution? The king's advisors suggest what is basically a kingdom-wide beauty pageant. The most beautiful young women from all 127 provinces are gathered up and brought to the palace. And in that group is a young Jewish orphan named Hadassah, though we know her as Esther, who was raised by her cousin Mordecai. Now here's where it gets dangerous. Mordecai gives her one crucial instruction. Whatever you do, do not tell anyone who you are or where you come from. So hiding the fact that she's Jewish, Esther has to navigate the crazy politics of the king's harem. And she does it brilliantly. She wins over everybody and eventually the king himself. He puts the royal crown on her head. Esther is now the queen. But her real identity is this huge secret just waiting to explode. So with Esther on the throne, our story's villain struts onto the scene, Haman the Agagite. And that title, Agagite, that's not just a random detail. It means he's a descendant of an ancient enemy of the Jewish people. So right away we've got this historical tension. King Xerxes promotes Haman above everyone else and orders all his officials to bow down to him. And this is where it all goes wrong. Mordecai, who works at the king's gate, flat out refuses to kneel to Haman. Not once. Day after day he refuses. Haman is filled with this simmering rage, but when he finds out Mordecai is a Jew, his personal grudge blows up into something way, way bigger. For Haman, just getting rid of Mordecai isn't enough. Not even close. He goes straight to the king and says, hey, there's this certain group of people scattered through your kingdom, and their laws are different. They don't obey you. He gets the king's permission and his royal ring to issue a decree. On a single day, chosen by lottery, every single Jewish person in the empire, men, women, and children, is to be wiped out, annihilated. When Mordecai finds out, he sends a message to Esther, begging her to go to the king and plead for her people. But this is a huge problem. See, there's a law. Anyone who just shows up in the king's inner court without being called is put to death, period. Unless, that is, the king holds out his golden scepter. And to make matters worse, Esther hasn't been summoned by the king in 30 days. Esther is terrified, and she hesitates. So Mordecai sends back this powerful, chilling message. He tells her, don't think for a second you'll be safe just because you live in the palace. And then he says it. Maybe your whole improbable journey from orphan to queen happened for this one exact moment. This is the pivot point for the whole story. Is she going to risk it all or stay silent? And this is where Esther becomes a legend. She makes her choice. She tells Mordecai to have all the Jews fast for her for 3 days, and she'll do the same. And men, she'll go to the king, even though it's against the law. Her words are just bone-chillingly brave. She's decided to put her life on the line for her people. Now get this. The night before Esther's big moment, the king can't sleep, just can't do it. So he orders his servants to read him the royal chronicles, basically the official records of his reign. And as they're reading, he's reminded of something he totally forgot. Mordecai, the Jew, had once uncovered an assassination plot and saved his life. The king asks, so what did we do for him? What was his reward? And they tell him, nothing. At that exact moment,
Haman walks into the court. He's there to ask the king's permission to hang Mordecai on a massive gallows he just built. But before Haman can even open his mouth, the king hits him with this fateful question.
Haman's ego goes into overdrive. He thinks, it's me. He's talking about honoring me. So he lays out the most over-the-top, lavish public ceremony he could possibly dream up. Dress the guy in the king's own robe, put him on the king's personal horse, and have a top noble lead him through the city, shouting about how great he is. And here it is, the great reversal. The king says, great idea, hurry up and do everything you just said for Mordecai the Jew. You can just picture the look on Haman's face. In an unbelievable moment of humiliation, he's forced to lead his mortal enemy through the streets in a parade of honor. That same evening, Haman has to go from that humiliating parade straight to Esther's second banquet. The king asks her again, what is it you want? And this time, she lays it all on the line. She pleads for her life, saying, my people and I have been sold to be destroyed. The king is shocked. Who would dare do such a thing? And Esther points right at Haman and says, an adversary and an enemy, this vile Haman.
The king is enraged. And in maybe the greatest act of poetic justice in history, one of the servants points out the 75-foot gallows Haman had just built at his own house, specifically for Mordecai. The king doesn't hesitate. He orders Haman to be impaled on the very gallows he built for his enemy. The villain is destroyed by his own twisted plan.
So the bad guy is gone, problem solved, right? Well, not quite. Haman's genocidal decree, signed with the king's ring, is still the law of the land. And remember that Persian law? Once it's made, it cannot be changed. The kill order is still active.
So the king comes up with a brilliant workaround. He gives his signet ring to Mordecai and tells him to write a new decree. This new law doesn't cancel the old one. It can't. But what it does is grant to all the Jews in the empire the right to assemble, to arm themselves, and to defend their lives against anyone who tries to attack them. It basically turns a death warrant into a declaration of self-defense.
So on the very day they were supposed to be annihilated, the Jews instead triumph over their enemies. And to remember this incredible turn of events, Mordecai and Esther create a new festival. They call it Purim, from the word pur, which means lot, a direct reference to the Lot's Haman cast to pick the day for their destruction. It's a celebration of turning sorrow into incredible joy.
When you boil it all down, the story of Esther is this breathtaking narrative of reversal. A hidden orphan becomes a queen. A genocidal plot is flipped on its head. A day of mourning becomes a day of celebration. And it leaves you wondering, maybe the most powerful moves are the ones you never see coming, working behind the scenes, waiting for that one perfect moment, for such a time as this.